talking about staff, let's be honest, most negotiators and valuers are in their 20s and early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
So we bring up the subject of millennials.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an opinion on how valuers, negotiators in their 20s and 30s that some people would classify as millennials,
Mm-hmm.
what's your opinion on the good and bad that they can bring to the industry?
Well, again, I'm probably going to upset some people here, but I think the problem is nothing to do with the millennial generation. The problem is to do with my generation. The people are not prepared to adapt and to change and to understand the world has moved on. You know, it's incredible how fixed people's views are. Look, I think young people today are as enthusiastic and as positive about the work environment as they were in my year. It's just they've got a different set of drivers. My generation was more motivated by money.
Yeah, it's all
right?
salary, car and bonus.
Absolutely,
That was
it was very visual because we grew up in an era. You know, I entered the industry, very late, so early '80s, basically, and that was what mattered.
It was your Vauxhall Nova GTE and your bill of metals.
Astra for me.
Oh.
Astra. Awful car. But the
big wheels.
Oh God, it was desperate. It was a desperate thing. But the thing is that was the driver. Our status was
based on our car, wasn't
things,
it?
cars, image, and so on. Right or wrong, that's just how it was. Today, I think the world has moved on. People have got a lot less material in their outlook. The world's become a better place in many respects for that, and people are driven by more important things. And actually, the brand or the company they work for is really important to them in terms of it being the right sort of company, and also they're being appreciated for the work that they do. In our day, often it was a case of you tolerated appalling management because that was just the way it was. Younger people aren't prepared to tolerate it. They don't need to tolerate it any longer because they've got much more mobility. They're able to work across the country, across the world, for that matter. So I think the problem lies more with the older generation than with the younger generation. Now that said, okay, ultimately it's down to a business to put in place and to create an environment where people want to give their best. My daughter she's 27, so she fits into that category. She's a lawyer with a very, very large law firm, currently the 6th largest law firm in the world, and it's on a trajectory to get to number 1. It's an incredible firm that she works for. Now, the competition for her to get into that firm was remarkable, really. And in the end, she had a 2-year effective apprenticeship, where at the end of the 2 years, some of her colleagues, right, were dismissed. That they were let go. They did not pass the 2-year test. So their stringency around that examination, was incredible. What do? Basically, I'm saying we as a generalism, all too often in this industry, if somebody has the right sort of skill set or experience, they've got a job, right? And instead we should be interviewing for the right attitudes and behaviours, which I've already identified what those 5 are. Skills, nobody has ever been fired. Very, very few people have ever been fired for skills and experience. They're normally fired for attitudes and behaviours. And what we need to understand is that the right attitudes and behaviours are, first of all, they're identifiable. Secondly, they are very trainable. We can train people and help them and coach them to develop them further. But ultimately, we need to create an environment where people want to deliver their best work. They want to turn up and do it themselves.
But how do you do that when basically, as a boss, you're presented with an entitled person who wants beanbags and free food? or again, is that the way they've been brought up? Medals for 8th places, and you can do anything, and you can ring up the headmaster and get it sorted. But in the real world, you can't.
There is an element of that, but I think it's exaggerated. I think in the real world, actually young people today have to be as competitive as my generation.
Do you think we were as perceived to be a pain in the backside?
Well, I've no doubt I was. I doubt you were. No doubt I still am by many people. But I mean, I think so. I mean, the old Mike Rutherford's song, "Every Generation Blames the One Before." And you look at that in the living years. If you look at that, that lyric and that statement, I think that's very true. And surely that's what life should be about. I mean, surely we should be evolving and getting better and improving. Now, along the way, yes, there are, the pendulum swings, and sometimes it swings too far. And I agree with you, 8th place, here's your medal, which is why Best Estate Agency Guide, getting back to that, nice little plug in there.
There you go,
right,
nice segue.
It's the top 3%. And when agents phone me up and go, I'm really good, I go, yeah, you might be really good, but are you in the top 3%? Because 97% don't win an award, 3% do win an award. So, somebody could be in the top 4%. That makes them a really good estate agent, but they're not going to win an award. The award is for the top 3. And I put that into context with one agent recently where I said, look, it was the Football League. You take the English and Welsh Football League, professional teams, okay, then basically last season, okay, there would only have been 3 winners, i.e. Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, right? If it was the equivalent of no Spurs, no Arsenal, no Man U, no any other team, right? Just 3 out of the entire Football League. That's the equivalent scenario. So yes, some young people have been brought up in a less competitive school environment. They've been brought up, but I tell you what, competition to get into the best universities is fierce, right? Competition to get jobs in certain marketplaces, fierce. And then ultimately, they've got to prove themselves in those business environments. So I think that generally younger people I think they get a poor press. I think the problem is as much, if not more, with the older generation not adapting themselves.
Okay, so what advice would you give to Joe Smith, estate agent, who employs a couple of millennials who just doesn't get them?
I'd say, Joe, find somebody else to manage them, mate, or find a way of getting.
Is it a case of sitting down and just talking to them? Because let's be honest, those Brits don't talk, do we?
Yeah, I think there's fundamentally it's down to whether or not you wish to work with people who are different to you. Okay,
with different values.
Absolutely. So if you just want to work with the same, your equivalent, then employ people like that. But you won't have a long-term sustainable business because the world has moved on considerably. So the key is, I think, Stephen Covey always used to have this idea in the 7 Habits he wrote about, if you want to be liked, okay, the best way of going about that is to find something about the person that you can like. So rather than trying to be likable, instead find something about them that you can like. And do you know what? It doesn't matter who it is, maybe a few exceptions, but nearly always you can find something about somebody where you think, you know what, I really like that characteristic. And play to that as a starting point. And have it's about creating, I think, a meritocracy ultimately, that matters in a business. And then therefore that matters around what you measure. Now if it's just numbers, if it's just profit, if that's your only measurement, okay, you're going to create a culture that's very different to one that actually also has metrics around customer service. There's got to be profit. I'm not being wishy-washy around it. Profit, no purpose, okay? But profit on its own is just a score, right, really. It's the summary of everything else that you've done, okay? I want to see all those other metrics in terms of customer service, your performance in terms of delivery to your client base, and your employee engagement metrics as well. How engaged are your people? Are they encouraging their friends to apply for jobs? Do they turn around on their own Facebook page or Insta page or whatever and say, we've got a fantastic opportunity at work. I love it there. You'd love it too.
Because